Welcome in, Warchant TV, Top 40 Countdown. I'm Jeff Cameron. There's Corey Clark. There is Tom Lang. You guys are you're watching us. We're talking about Florida State football. That's a really good thing. Like and subscribe, but I won't spend a lot of time on like and subscribe. You're already doing that. You need to tell your friends to do the same. Let's get the list out. Let's take a look at what came before we get to 16 through 20. Right now, there you'll see 30 through 21. Anything jump off the page at you as preposterous, guys? Anybody like, oh, look at what Ira did here, or why did Aslan do that? I don't know. The list looks pretty solid here. I'm struck every time we do this, boys, that Florida State has a lot of good players.
Yeah, they do. I'll start and say that I think it's correct that most everybody on the staff, I think everybody, put Marquiston Douglas ahead of Kyle Morlock in terms of reports. I wasn't sure that everybody would get that answer right, but that's the correct answer. So for me, good job, everybody.
Well, and that helps that we get to watch practice, right?
Yep.
That's all I'll say about. Well, I'll say more about that than that. But Marquiston Douglas was good last year in spots, and he was good in the spring. Like, he was good. Morlock was not bad. It's just that Marquiston Douglas established himself as probably the number 2 tight end, just like he was last year. He didn't do anything to disappoint. He looked like he took another step.
He's a problem for people. He's so big and he runs so well for that size. He can stay in and block. He releases in routes well. He actually runs routes well for his size. He's got his hands improved as the year went on, too. He was invaluable in that bowl game, obviously. Yeah, Marquiston Douglas is, I think, going to be a real plus player for Florida State this year. It's weird. We talk so much about this offensive line and how we're blown away by 3 years ago, we were thinking this is the worst offensive line in the conference, worst receiving core in the conference. Now all of a sudden you have as deep an offensive line unit as there is in the conference, maybe in the country, as Corey was pointing out the other day. We're also old and veteran laden, and all these guys have started 30-plus games. Same now at tight end, where you've got 3 guys that I think we're all really excited about. So they've done a complete flip and overhaul of this roster, and I think it really stands out when you look at tight ends and guys like Marquiston Douglas and the offensive line. All right, without further ado, if you would, let's begin. Let's post it here. There you'll see the list in front of you if you're watching. We'll start with Bless Harris on the offensive line. I'm curious, guys, do you think Bless Harris is a starter? I do. I think most of us do. Right tackle, any chance you could see him win out the job over Robert Scott at left tackle, which would then allow perhaps, we're always trying to juggle your best 5. On the right side, at that point, Byers could play at right side. I mean, there are a lot of guys that are, I think, interchangeable.
Well, I think if you look at your 2 rankings there, you guys definitely think he's a starter. I think he's probably a starter, but I'm not 100% sold on it, which is a good problem to have. I thought he had a good spring. It was hard to determine anything from last year because he played, 40 snaps before he got hurt for the loss for the season. But no, to answer your question, I think they like Robert Scott there, man. I think they feel like that's maybe an anchor. Let's not screw with that. Let's have these 5 bodies for these 3 spots, or these 6 bodies for these 3 spots that are open. If you consider center to be locked up too, there's 3 spots that are wide open for guys to come in and compete. I want to see what Jeremiah Byers looks like in August. I'm not convinced that Bless Harris is going to beat out Jeremiah Byers, but we'll see. I thought he was better than him in the spring at that position.
Yeah, I think so. I've got him as a starter. There's no doubt. I think you've got him, judging by top 10, as maybe the best tackle option.
I think he is the best tackle option. I like him a lot. And I have a scenario in my head, just so you know, and I want you to expound. But I have a scenario in my head where I could see him start at left tackle and Robert Scott playing guard.
I mean, that could be possible. This is the fun part of having such depth is you could try in fall camp. You don't want to do it too deep into August, but you could try out different combinations and see how things stick. The other thing is, while we get into most every practice, we don't get into every practice. And what was interesting last year was Jazz Turnitine didn't work a ton at tackle. They seemed to like him at guard.
Yeah.
But you saw him flip-flop early on in the season when Bless Harris goes down due to injury. Then he finds his home at right tackle. But there was a surprise or 2. So I wouldn't put it past the staff to think up different combinations. Alex Atkins says just give me the best 5 on the field at the same time. But for Bless Harris' case, as it pertains to this specific player, I saw somebody who was technically sound, just like he was last year when he first got on campus, with a little bit more physicality in spring. I thought, oh, okay, so you got a little bit more strength to you, Bless. That's why I think he profiles as a starter. You'll see later, a bit of a teaser here that I'm spoiling. But personally speaking, I think Jeremiah Byers is going to start somewhere. It's just he could be a tackle, he could be a guard. I think he's your Swiss Army knife. But Bless Harris, to me, profiles maybe not as your best tackle yet, but definitely is one of your best two, for sure.
It's the coolest thing. This just continues a theme, guys, of having an abundance of players to plug in and move around and guys that you can feel comfortable with. If you put this guy tackle, move this guy to guard, if they ever get Roddick to snap the ball, you could have options at center. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of things there with this offensive line that are encouraging. Fintrell Cypress came in from Virginia, and I think we thought we would notice signs right off the bat that he was going to be an elite difference maker. We saw none of that in the spring, save for a few plays here or there. Then again, it's spring football. He's a veteran. He's done it on the field at the Power 5 level in this conference. He's been a very good player. I don't think we have any reason to believe he won't be, but we're really going to be watching him closely when fall camp starts because, Corey, I'll start with you. I don't think we walked out of spring going, oh, well, that's the answer for sure. We're good to go there. No,
in fact, I thought Jarian was better than him. Renardo Green was the best DB they had all spring, and maybe you could say even Greedy Vance. Azarie, I thought, was on level with Fintrell Cypress. I think the difference is Cypress has done it. Maybe, like you alluded to, maybe he's a little bored of spring practice. He's been doing this for 4 years. He's also getting to know a new team, a new scheme, maybe trying to find his footing. The thing is, if he can be the guy he was at Virginia, where he led the nation in pass breakups, he was a PFF All-American or all ACC player. If he can be that guy, what would that mean for your secondary? To have him and Renardo Green play like that. Like, I think Jarian's a nice player. I think Azarie could be. They're not what Fintrell Cypress was in 2022. If you get that guy and not necessarily the guy we saw in the spring, that is a big deal for the secondary.
Your thoughts on Fintrell Cypress, Tom? I mean, I think it kind of echoes what we've been talking about. All three of us seem to see the same things with him.
Yeah, not much to add here. I think if I didn't go to spring practice once and I just started at the job and I know the news of Fentrell coming to camp, I might have penciled him in at 6 or 7, but since we saw spring, he slides down.
Yeah.
Just about everybody on the staff has him 15 to 21, somewhere in there. Aslan's the outlier at 28. He was not impressed at all with what he saw in spring, but he's covering the Manning Passing Academy. So check out Warchant TV for content from the Manning Passing Academy of Jordan Travis. But I think we all saw the same thing, which is, well, the PFF grade says one thing, spring performance said another.
I don't worry about the spring performance. He transferred in. He's getting his footing. He's figuring out the lay of the land, learning a new scheme, learning new coaches, learning teammates, learning all that. I'm not worried about it. Aslan, if strictly are grading from what we saw in camp, I get why Aslan put him at 28. I think the three of us are projecting that he's going to be the guy that we've already seen him be at Virginia. At number 18, Joshua Farmer. Florida State had a scare this offseason with the thought that Farmer might leave. And the reason they were scared isn't because they didn't have guys that are going to start over him or are better than him as currently constructed, but because of this guy's continued potential and how he's gotten better every year he's been here. He's gotten really strong. He's put on 50-plus pounds of muscle since he's arrived. There you see the rankings. Tom has him at 10. I had him at 12. Corey, you had him way down at 22. Is that because of the abundance of defensive linemen, so you don't think the role is as prominent?
Yeah, I think he goes into the season assuming that Darrell Jackson gets the waiver when that comes down any day now, that he's your fourth defensive tackle. That's in my mind. I think he's your fourth defensive tackle. So he's going to play, 25, 28 reps a game maybe. And it's just hard to have four defensive tackles for me in my top 15. But I do think he's a big-time player. I think that was one of the bigger moments of the offseason was getting him out of the portal.
Yep.
Because, man, you got a guy because he was dominant at times in the spring.
Yeah.
He might be one of those guys that's taken one of those jumps that becomes one of those Odell defensive tackles that we talk about years from now. He looked really, really good in the spring.
Tom, I think he's going to be a star. I don't know about this year, to Corey's point, but I think he's a star in the making. He works extremely hard. He's a quirky personality. He's fun to talk to. He's kind of interesting, but he has put in the work, man. You can't put on 50 pounds of muscle if you haven't put in the work, and he cares. And every now and then that switch comes on, as Corey was just alluding to, and he'll dominate a practice.
Yeah, for me, this is one part a hedge against Braden Fisk and one part a hedge of Darrell Jackson's waiver. And then the biggest part of the equation here was the criteria is impact, potential impact. He's going to draw so many single teams when he's on the field. Any one of those other three defensive tackles that are out there, Fabian Lovett, Fisk, and Darrell Jackson, are going to draw so much more attention that Josh Farmer, I think, has a lot more opportunity to make splash plays and rack up production. Does it necessarily mean that he's your top 2 or top 3 defensive tackle on the roster? No, but I think when you look at the stat book at the end of the year, Josh Farmer is going to be put in so many advantageous situations that I think the production is going to say that he should fall somewhere around that top 10. That's my thinking. That's my math.
Take a look at who's next on the list here from 16 to 20. We've got Braden Fisk, the aforementioned. Corey thinks that he's the best player Florida State's ever recruited out of the portal.
Right.
If you take a look at this list, that's number 7. Tom has him at 20. I have him way down at 25. I actually kind of did what you did, Corey, here. I like Braden Fisk. I think he looks the part. We saw him just standing around, obviously, with that green jersey on, as you see in that picture. He really wasn't able, because he was recovering from the surgery on the shoulder and all that, he wasn't able to participate, so we couldn't watch him in action. He's extremely athletic. We can see how fast he is. Not that that's necessary for a defensive tackle, but he raced Mike Norvell every day. He's huge. He looks the part, but I think Darrell Jackson's going to get his waiver, and I think Josh Farmer is going to play a lot, and I do think that they've got plenty of people, obviously Fabo. So I just don't know what to do with him. I think he's going to be an impact. They may even kick him to the outside some too, because I think he's a set the edge kind of guy as well. I like him a lot. You may not think so because I have him 25, but I want to hear why you have him 7.
Well, I go with what Tom just said about potential impact. Imagine if he is healthy. Imagine if he is the guy that Notre Dame wanted, the guy that would have probably turned pro after last season if he didn't get injured. You're talking about adding a Fabian Lovett type player to a defense that already has Fabian Lovett. And he's also never played with somebody like Fabian Lovett.
Yeah.
My man's been double teamed for 2 years up there. And he still put up huge numbers, 40-something tackles for loss in 2 seasons. So throwing him onto a defensive line with Jared Verse and Fabian Lovett and Darrell Jackson, I think he has a chance to be like what Tom's saying, make a lot of production plays, because he won't be double teamed a lot, because you have to double team 0 or you have to go get 5 out on the outside. And he's going to have a lot of one-on-one matchups. And I think it's more about his potential impact, because how could I grade from what we saw in the spring? The only thing that was impressive was that he occasionally beat Norvell in races, which was impressive.
Yeah.
Because he outweighs him by 130, 140 pounds. But we didn't see anything in the spring to say, okay, he's ready to make a huge impact. But his production, the fact that he was the number 1 defensive lineman in the entire portal, and the fact that he gets to play with Fabian Lovett, I think he has a chance to have a huge impact on this team.
Tom, I was impressed by how committed he was. Every day he was out there talking it up with his segment group, talking with the coaches, running as hard as he could. Like, he didn't take any drills off. I mean, that's just conditioning for him. But he looked great. He looks intense. He looks committed. What kind of impact do you have him making?
Yeah, this is a hedge against the injury and the recovery. That's all this is. He carries the weight very naturally for a big guy. Some guys, you look at him, you say, man, he is maxed out. Braden Fisk he's not Darrell Jackson, where he's just out of the freak factory, but he's not a small guy either. So he's got a real chance to make a big-time impact. I can look foolish for having him 20 by season's end. This is just a total hedge against not seeing him against Power 5 competition, and then also the recovery process. That's all it is.
Take a look at the final guy here as we go through, as we come off of Braden Fisk, who came in at 17. We had a tie, so what we ended up doing was moving Tatum Bethune, who tied with Kalen DeLoach, into this list. So he's 15, 16, however you want to look at it. Tatum Bethune, guys, I'll start here. I was unimpressed in the second half of the season. I know he was injured. He ran around blocks. He looks smaller to me. I think that's the byproduct of not being able to work out with the injury. I'm worried about Tatum Bethune. When he's healthy, he's a smart football player. He's played a ton of football. He has gobs of experience. The best thing he has going for him right now, I think, is the fact that he, could be behind a defensive line that allows him to really, really run. And if that's the case, then maybe we'll see a much better player. But I didn't like the way he performed in the second half of last season. And again, I'm going to give him a break here because I think he may have been, he wasn't. He was hurt. We know he was hurt. And he played through injury, so he's tough. But, man, he's got to be better this year.
Yeah, it's true. He wasn't great last year, but, I mean, he was more than banged up. Like, he wasn't practicing a lot. He was just playing in games, and that does have an impact. Like, he wasn't himself. When we saw him as himself, and there were only a few games, I thought, you're like, okay, that is a productive, solid college linebacker. And that's kind of what this program needs right now. Look, man, you don't have a lot of linebackers to choose from. Yep. Certainly not any with any experience except for DeLoach. By the way, you gave away where DeLoach is on the next
I had to explain
video,
it.
Jeff. Okay. I mean, come on, man. You could have said he just tied with someone.
That's all right.
You lifted the veil.
People could have figured it out.
Well, sure. So, but I think, he had 84 tackles last year. He's had almost 300 in his career. there is a piece of having that kind of experience in a veteran in the middle of your defense that's a big deal when you're trying to win a championship. If he stays healthy, if he's the guy that we saw at the end of the year, like you said, it would not great. But if he's the guy that was at UCF, if he's the guy that was pre-injury at Florida State, I think you're talking about a pretty productive player and an important piece on this defense.
I'm rooting for him, Tom. I don't have anything against him. I thought he looked good early in the season, but man, he kind of trailed off pretty quickly.
He did, but I mean, think about the Oklahoma and the Florida games and how the line of scrimmage was reset. I mean, what are you supposed to do with that? That's the hard part. And at that point, I think, if you rewatch those games, you could see that the linebackers, sometimes the slot defenders and the safeties, they're guessing where they're supposed to go because they just have an offensive lineman right in their face. So they got to pick their poison. And that's what Florida State's offense is going to do to other teams this year. But I think for Deloach, who, yes, spoiler alert, is going to be in the next part of the list, and Tatum Bethune, they're not going to have to guess as much. And so they're going to be allowed to showcase what they do have. This is all about health. If Tatum Bethune is healthy, he's going to produce. We'll see if he could be healthy for the whole 12-game slate.
They need him. They need him. They need him to be healthy. They need him to produce. He's going to have an opportunity because of that defensive line in front of him to really run free. He can clearly diagnose plays. I really am rooting for that young man to do that. Florida State's that much better if he's able to do it. For Tom Lang and Corey Clark, I'm Jeff Cameron, reminding you to like and subscribe so that you find out the next time one of these videos pops up and we take a look at 11 through 15, right? Give out that thumbs up. Make sure you do all that good stuff. Don't forget to tune in to Wake Up Warchant, the Jeff Cameron Show, Seminole Headlines, and all of the great programming here at Warchant. Until next time, be well, everybody, and go Noles.